last-minute shake-up at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. Is okay with
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Thanks,
as simple
Ryan.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to the NASM-CPT Podcast with Richey, winner of the Share Care Emmy Award for Social Storytelling and the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hey, y'all, and welcome to the NASM-CPT Podcast. My name is Richey, and today I got a question that I was asked, and I liked the question, and it was, what are your favorite assessments that you like to do when you first start training a client? I think this is interesting because there are kind of some thoughts here. One is, one of the reasons people ask the question is because they want to know if I really do any of the assessments that NASM suggests that we do. And for the most part, the answer is yes, I do. But also, I think there are questions about, are there other assessments that you do that may not be on the NASM list? And it's interesting because NASM is not anti any assessment, really. They just have to narrow it down to give you a list of things to do and prioritize certain assessments. But if, there are hundreds, thousands of assessments that you could choose from, and all of them have their place, and they all work to some degree, depending on if there's, the validity of each of those. But the idea is that they're going to provide you some information. Some people also point out that every workout is an assessment. Every movement of every exercise is indeed an assessment. But we're talking about when you first meet someone, what information are you trying to get? So I'm going to go directly into what it is that I do with clients. The first one, I bet you can guess it. It is straight up the NASM alley. That's right, the overhead squat assessment. That's the starter. That's the starter for people when they come in. Of course, when they come in, I have conversation. These are physical assessments. Initially, I'll start out with an assessment, who you are, what you do, what's your exercise background, all of that objective, subjective information, the PAR-Q, yes, important. Now we get to the movement assessments and physical assessments. One is the overhead squat assessment. Why? Well, I like the overhead squat assessment because it gives me information about your lower extremity, your upper extremity, and your lumbopelvic hip complex. And there are different ways that you can implement an overhead squat assessment, generally seen in the corrective exercise content, as to what it is that we are going to do in order to get more specific information. How can we address each of these, the overhead squat assessment, and learn more? But ideally what we're doing is we're getting information about the foot and ankle complex. We're getting a little information about the knees and the hips. We're getting information about the low back. We're getting information about upper back, shoulder, and cervical spine. So that's what I like about the overhead squat assessment. It's an overview. It gives me a lot of information in very few exercises. But there are some people who do great overhead squat assessments or decent overhead squat assessments. And based off that assessment, I see it and I go, there's nothing that I would really implement as a means of intervention based off of this. But then I have them do a single leg squat. And a single leg squat can tell me a lot more information. That single leg squat is going to provide a lot more information. It's not just whether or not somebody can balance. That's a big part of it. But as people start to move, does their knee go into a valgus, an extreme valgus, which I tend to see in people who even have nice overhead squat assessments. So that single leg squat assessment, hands on the hip, I want to see if the hands come off the hip because you're struggling with segmental displacement in order to regain balance. Is balance an issue? Is stability an issue? When you squat, does your leg stay in a decent position, but your body rotate outward or inward? Does your body stay in a decent position, but your knee goes inward most likely? So there's a lot of things that I can see from single leg squat assessment. I follow it with a bridge. And the thing I like about the bridge, it gives me information about how tight the muscles in the quads are, but it also gives me a lot of information on what it is that you feel. And I am inquiring about your feelings. I want to know, do you feel your glutes work in a bridge? And this is going to give me a lot of information about what's going on neuromuscularly when you are asking your body to move. Because a bridge doesn't, the glutes are not the only thing that works in a bridge, and you can feel it in other places. But if you do not feel your posterior, your derriere, whilst doing a bridge, then something's off. Something's off. The glutes should be a large contributor to that. The hamstrings, the low back, supplemental. If you feel it on the front of your thighs, it might be tightness there, which is also information that I can get. And also how that bridge is done. So a lot of times people may not know how we want the bridge to be done. So I simply just cue them what I want, how I want it to look, and see if they can follow suit. The next one I like to do is called a bird dog. And the bird dog is when you're on all fours. So you're quadruped, you're on your hands, your knees, and your toes. So all sixes. Nobody says that. So you're on your hands and your knees. And initially what I do is I just have them lift one hand up and ask them to lift one hand up without shifting their body and see if they can do that. And then have them do it on the other side. And if they do that well, a lot of times I'll just have them walk their hands out a little bit more and a little bit more and ask if they feel that in their core, in their center. And eventually I'll move them out, if they do it well, all the way into a short lever push-up position. So they're on their knees and there's a straight line from their head, shoulders, hips, and knees. And their knees are touching the floor. Their hands are out straight in a push-up position. And they just lift one hand in the other hand. And that's information that I like to receive to know if they are feeling that in their core and how far they can progress before they start to feel it. Then I go into push-ups. So from there, they can shake it out and then get up and go into a push-up position. They can either do it from their knees. Ideally, we have a long lever push-up, so the legs are straight and they can do a push-up. If not, ideally, instead of having them do it on their knees, I would rather have their hands be elevated on a bench or a plyo box or a bar of some sort, where they can keep their body straight. And so I'm looking at that. I'm looking at their posture when they do it. I want to know, does their scapula wing? Does their head jut forward? Do they lift one side up first before the other side comes up? Do they arch their back? Do they sag their hips? What position is their body in when they do their push-up? And for me, push-up is a dynamic plank. So for me to be able to see a push-up, a plank with movement, because if you just have somebody hold a plank, and yeah, it can look horrendous sometimes when they do planks, but you can cue them. When you have them do dynamic things, they cannot focus on their core very well while they're doing a push-up for most part. And that gives me more information. All right, I've got more to come, but before we do, this episode of the NASM-CPT Podcast is brought to you by NASM-1, the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. Get the Edge app to schedule and program. Clients enjoy half off all certifications and specializations, access to free CEUs, and more. All of this for just $35 a month. Go to NASM.org/membership to learn more about NASM-1. All right, y'all, I will then have them go up against a wall. So I'll find a blank, empty wall, preferably not on the mirrors. It's my gym, so I don't want to mess them up. If I see people doing it on the mirrors, I don't get too mad, but it's not my preference. And so they go up against a wall, and I want to see flexion, so shoulder flexion against the wall. I want to see external or lateral rotation. I want to see internal rotation. I want to see a horizontal abduction. And then I'll even have them do wall angels or wall slides and see how their shoulders move. I like to keep their low back pressed against the wall. So they're kind of in a little quasi squat position so they can go into the posterior tilt. Low back touches the wall, upper back touches the wall. I like to have their head touch the wall. Can they keep their elbows, wrists, and hands on the wall? So many people cannot. And then they start to slide up. Can they keep their arms touching the wall as they slide up the wall? It is maybe the most difficult exercise in the gym. And so it is an assessment that I do because it is a mobility assessment. It is a strength assessment. It is a flexibility assessment. It assesses it all. So I love doing the wall slides with the back against the wall, elbows, wrist, and hands touching the wall. And for whatever information I get from that, their elbows can't touch the wall. Their elbows touch, but their arms come forward. So I'm trying to get them to externally rotate. They can't touch the wall, so they're off of the wall. Then that gives me information about their range of motion and their strength. Then I can have them do that lying down. If they lie down and the arm goes back against the floor, then I know that it's a strength issue, not a flexibility issue, and I'm able to garner information from this. All of this is helping me find information so that I can put together a program very specific for them. And a lot of times that program is more about what does the warm-up, what does the movement prep look like? The workouts can be more similar, but the movement prep is going to be very specific to, well, this is your right shoulder on this side, your left hip on that side, your right calf on the other side. So we can go around and look at specific parts of the body that may be causing you trouble. And that's where we're foam rolling. That's where we're stretching. That's where we're doing our isolated activations, and then going into our global movement patterns in order to watch them move to try to get everything to work together. I like doing also trunk rotations. So I want to see trunk rotations. I want to see side bending in the spine. And then I'll check out cervical movements, rotating to each side, hyperextension, hyperflexion, lateral bend to each side. And that gives me information, not just as a personal trainer, but as a licensed body worker, that if they get a lot of things that are stuck in their neck, then I can do some hands-on work to help support them in that. Cervical spine is the only thing that I check for people where I might do hands-on work. Otherwise, we're personal training. I'm not putting my hands on people. I'm here as a trainer unless someone hires me specifically or asks me specifically to work on their body. Now, I used to do goniometric assessments, and I will occasionally now do goniometric assessments. But for the most part, I am kind of eyeballing what's going on based off these global assessments. And if I need to, I'll get them on the table. I'll look at hip internal and external rotation. And I may or may not use a goniometer to assess it. But a lot of times, unless I'm working with a high-end athlete, I'm eyeballing it, saying you got about 15 degrees internal rotation and 60 degrees external rotation on your hip. We're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. We gotta balance that out a little bit. So we got a lot of external rotation. We need more internal rotation. Let's start working on a program that's going to give us the answer to identify how we create solutions around that. So there are times that I will do specific measurements, but for the most part, I will eyeball things that I would look at and say, based off of our movement assessment, let me do some specific range of motion assessments. I do like to spend more time with range of motion assessments that are active, meaning that the clients are doing it. Occasionally, I will passively take them through a range of motion so I can identify whether it's a strength issue or a flexibility issue that's getting in the way. A lot of times it's both. And then when it comes to cardio, here's what I do. I let them choose whatever they want. So whatever they want to get good at, or whatever they're intrigued by, or whatever they already do that they're good at. Otherwise, I used to do the Harvard step test, and I still love the Harvard step test, a 5-minute step test on a 20-inch box. But Harvard doesn't care if you are 5'1", it's still a 20-inch box. And if you're 6'5", it's still a 20-inch box. And that's not very fair if you ask me. So I will alter the size of the steps, but a lot of times steps can be really hard for people. So I have switched that throughout the year. I mean, don't take it off, but it used to be this is my gold standard, what I like to have people to do. But if people want to run now, I let them run. Otherwise, I love the concept to exercise equipment like the ski erg and the rower. So I might start them out at 500 meters. And if 500 meters is a good base, it doesn't take too long for people to do 500 meters. And that gives them a base. And so that gives them a base. So I can say, okay, this is what you've done. This is our benchmark. And this is what I'd like for you to surpass. And then, as you know, I've talked about before, there's 100 meters, 200 meters, the 500 meter, 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, 5,000 meters, 8,000 meters, 10,000 meters. There's all sorts of things that you can do. You get to decide what it is that you want to implement. I have PR charts that have that listed out. And just depending on how somebody feels, I might have them do more anaerobic work, so shorter distances, how fast can you do it? Or I might have them do longer distance, and if they can maintain that cardio because they're feeling pretty good today. Also, if they're exhausted anaerobically, then I might have them do a longer, like a 2,000 meter or a 5,000 meter on the ski erg or on the rower. I love work on the bike, but none of those whom I train enjoy bike work. So there are occasions where I will go for calories on that. How long does it take to get 30 calories? So I know it's a lot, but we're working over here. And then finally, the last thing I'll say is, depending on the person, once we go through the assessment, we're going to start working out. And that workout are going to be the major lifts that you're going to do. So I like to do generally a squat. I like to do bench press. I might have lat pull downs. Usually don't do deadlifts and squats in the same day for a new person. But eventually I'm looking to get a 10 to 15 rep max for each client just in the initial workouts. And then we have a benchmark. And those assessments and those benchmarks allow me to do two things. If I watch somebody squat and it looks terrible and we've gone through all of the corrective stuff, we're going to do a much lighter weight. We're not going to focus on a 10 rep or a 15 rep max. We're going to focus on movement. But once I can get people moving well enough and safe enough that fall within my performance parameters, then we go to a 10 to 15 rep max. And that's our benchmark. And our goal after that is to keep getting stronger and beat those numbers. And that's the assessments that I do and how I set people up. I hope this helps. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks for asking the question. If y'all got a question for me, feel free to reach out. Hit me up on Instagram at dr.rickreach. Boy, I don't even know my name. Rick Richey. Or email me, rick.richey@nasm.org. Y'all remember, like, subscribe, share with your fitness friends and family, leave a 5-star review, and leave a comment. It helps people find us. The algorithm, it does magic, and more people can find this podcast, and we'd appreciate it. Y'all keep inspiring people to fitness. Thanks for listening. This has been the NASM CPT Podcast.